Hi, I'm Mark, and welcome to what is in fact the second of the thoughts type of video that I'm doing. The first one was an appreciation of short stories. This one has been occasioned by this book, Cocoon, which I'm currently reading by Spike Milligan. Wasn't intending to talk about this book until I had in fact finished it. It's not very big, but I've only got that far in. I don't know. Spike Milligan, what a character. The introduction. He said, "This damn book nearly drove me mad. I started it in 1958 and doodled with it for 4 years. I don't think I could go through it all again." Know exactly what he means. It drains you, writing a book. Really difficult process. So, in the 20s, I think it's 1924, Ireland split into two. There was Ulster that remained part of the United Kingdom, but Éire, Southern Ireland, became its own republic. And there had been long disturbances to get that. And Sligo is one of those counties in the south which borders up to the border. And of course this hypothesizes a fictitious place called Cocoon in that county, where it's really hot when it opens. And it's the making of that boundary. Very difficult period in Irish history, and Spike Milligan, well known for his offbeat, surreal comedy. How was he going to approach that? Well, he did it in a comedic way. And I know, as having written to myself, you either approach this as rinse and repeat in the same vein of somebody else, or you just bring your own manner to bear to write the book. And Spike wrote it potentially in the way only he could write it. Very offbeat. But right at the beginning, and this is what I want to talk about, he does the following. We're introduced to a character called Dan Milligan, interesting his own name, or the Dan Milligan. And he is laying out, he's been in the war, as we find out, First World War. He's a bit of a coward, he's a real character, and he's laying out, considering his legs. And this is another thing about Spike Milligan, who was very pro-Irish. I think he had an Irish passport at the end. And I'd be interested to know what Irish men and women think of this. Because he writes the language as almost like a cliche of what the Irish would have sounded potentially to the English ear. So he said, he's got his legs out. "I think I'll bronze me limbs." He rolled his trousers kneewards, revealing the like of two thin, white, hairy affairs of the leg variety. He eyed them with obvious dissatisfaction. And he asks himself, "What a day?" he repeated angrily. And suddenly, we don't know who at this point, a reply comes. "Legs." "Legs? Legs? Whose legs?" "Yours." "Mine? And who are you?" "The author." So what happens, and this is what I wanted to talk about, was the breaking of the fourth wall by an author. Now, I remember reading Tristram Shandy that happened, basically, where the author can interject himself or herself into affairs, but never having a conversation with a character. And this book, Ariel, there's a part where the author interjects himself and his own viewpoints, which is counter to the era in which it was set. So Percy Bysshe Shelley, he was in the 1810s, 1820s. The author was writing this, is French, in the 1910s, 1920s, and therefore gives his own opinion. But, okay, it's a biography. But rarely have I come across a novel in which the author has a conversation with the character that he or she is writing. And he carries on. Author, did you write these legs?" "Yes." Then it continues with the Irishness. "I don't like 'em at all. And I can't do the accent, so I won't even try. "I could have writted better legs myself." "Did you write your legs?" "No." "Ah, so you got someone else to write your legs. Someone who's a good leg writer, and then you write this pair of crappy old legs for me. Well, mister, it's not good enough. Well, I'll try and develop them with the plot. It's a diabolical liberty letting an untrained leg writer loose on an unsuspected human being like me. And then, of course, it's Spike Milligan. It was a Dublin accent charged with theatrical innuendo. Like all Irish, he could make good morning sound like a declaration of war, which it usually was. Amazing. And it's not just the breaking of the fourth wall, which happens a lot in movies, but I can't think of any of the book in which that's happened, but it may happen quite regularly. I mean, it's similar to the philosophy of Andy Warhol. He's referencing certain things as though it's the author talking to himself. But talking to a character that's been created really tickled my fancy. And it's just the continual wit that is brought to bear here that sets this apart. So he's there sunning his legs, and suddenly this huge battle axe of a woman comes out who he doesn't know who it is, and the author has to tell him it's the wife. And she's fed up that he's laying out there and not doing any work or got a job. And she says, I'm going in to the house for 5 minutes, and then there's a threat. If you're still here when I come out in half an hour... I'm not sure, perhaps it's just me, just the humour. There's this character called Murphy, pretty ugly. Again, this is just the wit of Spike Milligan. We sold the hat stand, and there's no place to hang it. That's why he's wearing a hat. Murphy's face was a replica of the King Edwards he grew, the potatoes. He did in fact look like King Edward VII. He also resembled King Edward III, V and II, making a grand total of King Edward XVII. I love that kind of humour. So, just the breaking of the fourth wall. The risk that an author takes to do that. He would have been well known at the time. He'd been recording the Goons. No doubt he would have had an agent. Probably not a literary agent, but certainly a theatrical agent. And then he's got to produce the script, and he goes all out and being different. And I really applaud that. I think that's fantastic. Shame that it was his only novel. He'd written quite a lot of books. They were like biographical about his time in the war. And again, they're full of great humour. The book, especially the first one, Adolf Hitler, My Part in His Downfall, is, I would say, required reading for anybody who's interested in World War II. Because we often get this false impression of what the war was like. For the soldiers, and he was out in Africa, a lot of them are just bored. It's like 99% bored and 1% terror. And he talks about the cold nights in the desert where he can't sleep, he's on hard ground. And he has to dig a hole so that he can put his elbow in, so it's like that, and he can't get the right depth. And it's just those little observances that I think are very unusual. He was very observant of life and the stupidity of people, and we're all stupid. And it's just these little wry twists he gives with the writing. He's talking about a father, a priest, who's like a prize boxer, but he's not. And he's trying to raise money for the church. Father Rudden, he's called. He says, Father Rudden had tried everything to raise funds. He even went to the bank. Don't be a fool, Father, said the manager. Put that gun down. And I'm going to talk about this when I do an episode on Cocoon. Again, breaking the fourth wall is a comedic act, especially with what's being said with the character, and it's this wit throughout. He said, "Oh, what a witty tongue you have today," said Milligan, gallant in defeat. So he's talking to a Mrs. O'Toole who's told him to piss off. And he says, well, he thought, you can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time, which is just long enough to be President of the United States. And that was written in the 50s. The device that authors have, and interjecting themselves into the flow of the narrative, it was something I wanted to talk about. And I've never come across it like that before. Really well done. It's got a good sense of place and time with these characters. And they're all literally ripping each other with the way they talk. And It's just this ribald sense of, well, obscure and almost over-the-top characterizations. They're all ugly. They've all got something wrong with them. And I just find that fascinating. As it says on the back, our first comic philosopher, poking fun at life, but interjecting himself into the story at the same time. Very unique. So, just my second thoughts to camera. Ta-ta for now.